On the face of it, getting to and winning a Super Bowl is an arduous task. It requires battling through the regular season, obtaining a record that is good enough to qualify for the playoffs, then enduring a playoff grind where losing one time will end it all. But saying these runs are all the same is like saying you climbed Mount Everest just because you climbed that hill behind your house. Some of these runs are definitely easier than others. Today we're going to count down the 10 easiest playoff runs made by a Super Bowl champion. And we're going to do that, as we always do, by using C-Score. This channel's metric for determining the overall quality of every NFL team during the Super Bowl era, beyond simply looking at its record. For a deeper explanation of C-Score, be sure to check out the description of this video. It's a simple task. Take the C-score of every team that each Super Bowl champion defeated during that season's playoffs and add them up. The lower that total, the easier that run was. Thank you for joining us today. We're ready to roll out the red carpet for these 10 teams. We're starting things off at number 10 with the 1994 San Francisco 49ers, champions of Super Bowl 29. This playoff run, like the past two seasons, boiled down to one matchup, the NFC Championship game between the 49ers and the Dallas Cowboys. And for these Niners, that matchup isn't just the largest piece of this pie, it's just about the entire pie. That's not a dash next to the Chicago Bears C-score, that is a negative number. And once the Niners got through Dallas and made it to the Super Bowl, defeating the Chargers was essentially a formality. Without the Cowboys here, San Francisco may have ended this list at number 1, but their near 28 C-score gives these 49ers opponents a combined total of 33.235. Coming off those back-to-back NFC title game losses to the Cowboys, San Francisco retooled their defense with the addition of several new starters, including the entire linebacker corps. Paired with an already explosive offense, and after enduring a fairly rough start to the season, the Niners went on quite a roll. With this victory, they became the first team to win 5 Lombardis, and, to that point, had done so without ever losing the big game. Those were the days. The Chicago Bears have a long and storied history throughout the entirety of the NFL, but in the Super Bowl era, they've been crowned just one time, and this was it. At number 9 are the 1985 Chicago Bears, champions of Super Bowl 20. After knocking on the door the season before, Chicago blew through the door and indeed the entire wall this season. Part of the reason the C-scores of these NFC teams are lower is because of how dominant the Bears were this year. With the Giants and the Rams brushed aside, the Bears didn't exactly face the AFC's best in the Super Bowl, but the Patriots do qualify as their best opponent during this run. Chicago outscored their opponents 91-10 in the playoffs, but all those opponents were able to manage a combined C-score is 31.927. We're not kidding when we say dominant. With their own C-score of 32.163, the 1985 Bears have the single highest C-score of the Super Bowl era. They also rank out as the single greatest defense of the Super Bowl era with a C-score of 32.055. They also had the NFL's all-time leading rusher in Walter Payton, who 38 years after his retirement still ranks second on that list. Whatever the slate of opponents in front of them, the Bears were ready to mow them all down. Known more for their easy regular season runs, they weren't immune to easy postseason runs either. Taking the number 8 spot are the 2016 New England Patriots, champions of Super Bowl 51. Winning a division where nobody bothered turning out a positive point differential, the Pats got their usual first-round bye, then got themselves a virtual bye to the AFC Championship game, courtesy of the Houston Texans. It did get progressively harder when the Steelers came calling, and when the high-powered offense of the Atlanta Falcons met them in the Super Bowl. We've told that story before, of course, so we won't bother doing it again. Suffice it to say, this wasn't exactly a murderer's row of competitors, with the Pats' 2016 playoff opponents combining for a C-score of 30.811. Certainly, these Patriots were very good, but they had the extra added benefit of playing the league's easiest schedule. In fact, despite entering every single season of the 2010s as division champions, giving them a first-place schedule, they indeed played the third easiest slate of the entire decade. They are the only team in the bottom 5 that isn't a member of the AFC South. These were all great teams, yes, but they sure had it easy. Rolling into the number 7 spot on the countdown are the 1995 Dallas Cowboys, champions of Super Bowl 30. This was their third Super Bowl in a 4-year span, at the time an unprecedented accomplishment. They also joined the 49ers as the only franchise with 5 Super Bowl titles, 1 season after the Niners did the deed themselves. But this was the first Cowboys run of the 90s that didn't include defeating San Fran. The Packers took them out instead, giving the Cowboys an Eagles-Packers combination. The AFC wasn't putting out the highest quality teams during this era, so the Steelers in the Super Bowl only proved to be Dallas's second toughest opponent. Taking all of this together, the 95 Cowboys faced a slate whose C-score adds up to 28.828. Despite winning the Super Bowl this season and being on the doorstep the season before, this was a tumultuous time for the Cowboys. Jimmy Johnson departed as head coach, and owner/GM Jerry Jones replaced him with Barry Switzer. This was after Jones stated that 500 coaches could coach this team. Well, the Cowboys coaxed the Super Bowl out of Switzer, but once their overwhelming talent started to wane, so too did the Cowboy mystique. If not for the 1985 Bears, this would be C-Score's highest rated team of the Super Bowl era. At number 6 are the 1991 Washington Redskins, champions of Super Bowl 26. They set the tone by starting the season 11-0 with an average margin of victory of just over 20 points per game. Their run through the NFC playoffs was far from daunting though, facing 2 teams in the Falcons and the Lions, who they had beaten by a combined 101-17 during the regular season. The NFC's second best team this season, the 49ers, actually missed the playoffs, so that would have made their run a bit more impressive. As it stands, after knocking off the Buffalo Bills in the Super Bowl, the Redskins' opponents during the 1991 playoffs combined for a C-score of 28.04. It's actually kind of amazing how well this team came together for one season. Outside of head coach Joe Gibbs, there were only 3 Hall of Famers on this team. The 85 Bears had that many just on their defensive line. Only Darryl Green got in on his first try. Then consider that just 2 seasons later, Washington was one of the worst teams in the league. But for this one glorious season, they put everything together and stamped their place in NFL history. Most teams gradually build to a Super Bowl championship. Not these guys. Coming in at number 5 are the 1999 St. Louis Rams, champions of Super Bowl 34. Coming off of 9 consecutive losing seasons spanning 2 different cities, the Rams took the greatest show on turf on tour and rode it straight to the top. 1999 was a period of upheaval in the NFL, presenting the Rams with a unique set of opponents in the playoffs. In fact, their divisional round matchup with the Minnesota Vikings grades out as their toughest task on paper, all while the Buccaneers and the Titans gave them all they could handle on the field. Yet, in the final analysis, these C-scores leave quite a bit to be desired, and altogether, they combined for a total of 27.257. When we say this was a season of upheaval, we mean it. 5 of the NFL's 6 divisions crowned new champions from the year before. For all of these teams, it had been a minimum of 8 years since they had done so. The only repeat champion, the Jacksonville Jaguars, didn't even exist the last time these teams were division champions. The Rams stood out at the forefront of this shakeup, just as they stood at the top of the podium inside the Georgia Dome. The first champions of a unified NFL take their place here at number 4, the 1970 Baltimore Colts, winners of Super Bowl V. This was the first season after the NFL-AFL merger was completed, and the 10 teams of the AFL struggled with the transition for the most part. To balance out the two new conferences, 3 NFL teams were placed in the AFC with those 10 AFL teams. The Colts were one of those 3, and they took advantage, finding their way to the Super Bowl against the Dallas Cowboys. Meanwhile, the NFL's 2 best teams this season, the Minnesota Vikings and the Detroit Lions, suffered upsets in the playoffs, with Dallas handing one of those out. Both the Vikings and the Lions' individual C-scores rank higher than these 3 teams combined, which come in at 25.149. The 1970 Colts, the 2007 Giants, and the 2011 Giants rank out as the 3 worst Super Bowl champions of all time. While their collective records remained essentially the same the following season, their C-scores all improved despite not making it back to the big game. The Colts were much better in 1971, by more than 16 points of C-score in fact. But they didn't get quite this kind of path laid in front of them like the 1970 squad did. For the second time, we welcome the Washington Redskins to the countdown. Their 1987 team, champions of Super Bowl 22, take the 3rd spot. The only other season in the Super Bowl era where the NFL did not play its schedule to its completion was 1982, and the Redskins were Super Bowl champions then as well. We have a recurring theme here for NFC teams making this list. The Redskins' path was made easier by not having to play the 49ers, who were upset by the Vikings. Had the Vikings not also upset the Saints, based on how the playoffs were set up back then, it would have been Washington versus San Francisco in the divisional round. Just like we saw in 1970, both the 49ers and the Saints' individual C-scores rank higher than these 3 teams combined, coming in at 22.769. Only 1 game for each team of the 1987 season was outright canceled, but 3 games were played with replacement players, as a vast majority of the real players remained on the picket line. While the Redskins went 3-0 in those games, they won the East by more than 3 games and were still the lowest seeded division champ in the NFC, so it's hard to say they saw too much of a benefit. Fun stat here, nearly 44% of all their playoff points came in just 1 quarter. We've got another franchise on the list for the second time. At number 2 are the 1977 Dallas Cowboys, champions of Super Bowl 12. The Cowboys were an excellent team this season, and so too were the Rams, but the 2 NFC Central teams that made the playoffs weren't particularly good. Actually, they were downright below average. Dallas took care of the Bears in the divisional round. After the Vikings upset the Rams in the Mud Bowl, the Cowboys took care of them too. Their saving grace here was facing the Broncos in the Super Bowl. This is the highest rated opponent faced by anybody on this list, yet the Cowboys still landed in 2nd place. Had they faced any other AFC team that season, they would have been number 1. As is, these 3 teams combined for a C-score of 22.29. Only 1 other team during the Super Bowl era has ever beaten 2 teams in the playoffs that had negative C-scores. That would be the 2004 Philadelphia Eagles, who also used those 2 wins to get to the Super Bowl, but they didn't win it. The Cowboys unquestionably caught a lucky break, but that was not a common theme for them in the 1970s. They played 18 other playoff games during the decade. Their opponent's average C-score in those games cleared 20 points. But the Cowboys do not take the number 1 spot. That would belong to the 1979 Pittsburgh Steelers, champions of Super Bowl 14. After winning back-to-back Super Bowls in 1974 and 1975, the Steelers repeated the repeat this season following their win in 1978. They are still the only franchise to win back-to-back Super Bowls more than once, and they did it in a 6-year span. The AFC was plenty strong this season, and while the Steelers avoided playing the excellent San Diego Chargers, they had more than reasonable competition in the Miami Dolphins and the Houston Oilers. No, their problem came in the Super Bowl itself against the Rams, who brought with them a negative C-score. If they had just half of a single point, Pittsburgh would have avoided this spot. But alas, their score counts, giving the Steelers a total here of 21.191. There are a lot of ways to evaluate this Steelers team, and the Steelers of the 1970s in general. But there is something about this squad that is simply phenomenal. Every member of its roster was either drafted by the team or brought in as an undrafted free agent. Not a single player on the roster had a former NFL team. This had never happened before, and unless the NFL enforces some kind of roster freeze in the future, it will never, ever happen again. Looking at the top 10 as a whole, you may notice that every single team here, except for the 2016 Patriots, comes from the 20th century. That is a bit fluky though, because if we did a top 13 instead of a top 10, we would have added 3 21st century teams, including another Patriots entry. Only 3 of these teams rank among the top 10 of Super Bowl champions by C-score. It just so happens that we have the top 2 in the 85 Bears and the 91 Redskins. The other team is the 94 49ers. Only 2 teams from the bottom 10 of Super Bowl champions appear. The other Redskins squad from 1987, and as mentioned during their entry, the 1970 Colts. Thank you so much for reaching this point of the video. By sticking around as long as you did, I can only presume that you liked it. So go ahead and hit that like button. Share the video and the channel to any football fans you may know who have yet to discover us. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and ding the notification bell so you don't miss out on all our future releases. Let me know what you think about all of this. With only one team per conference getting a bye in the playoffs now, it is going to be harder for new teams to break into this list. Just this past season, the Philadelphia Eagles defeated 4 opponents to win the Super Bowl, and they only made it to 16th place. But with upsets abound and weaker teams making the field, it is completely doable. Was there anyone who didn't make this list that you thought would? Anyone that was on the list that you weren't expecting? Sound off on these topics or anything else you may have on your mind right down there in the comments section. Thank you once again for joining us today, and until next time, I hope you have an awesome day.